I never saw it coming. I mean, I heard the rumors. People talk. They say that marriages are fragile, that people change, that nothing lasts forever. But we were different, right? At least I thought we were. It started like any other day. I was at work, grinding through the usual routine, when my wife, Emily, called me. Nothing unusual about that. She always called me during lunch to check in. The kids were at school, and she had a little time to herself, so it was our moment to touch base. But today, something felt off. Hey! Her voice came through the phone, light and casual, but with something underneath it that I couldn't quite put my finger on. You know, it's Sarah's birthday this weekend. She invited me to a party. I was thinking of going. Is that okay? Now, Sarah. Sarah was Emily's old classmate from high school. The two of them had been close back in the day, but over the years, they'd drifted apart. I didn't even know if Sarah was still in town. Emily didn't really talk about her anymore. In fact, the last time I'd heard Sarah's name was when Emily found her on Facebook a few months ago. They'd messaged back and forth a couple of times, but that was it. I didn't think much of it. I mean, she was just going to a party. What was the harm in that? It was Sarah's birthday, after all. Yeah, that's fine, I said, trying to keep my tone neutral. Have fun. I'll hold down the fort with the kids. But even as the words left my mouth, something about her response struck me. There was a hesitation, like she wasn't quite being honest with me. Thanks, she said, but there was a weird lilt to her voice, like she was holding something back. I'll be home late, okay? I agreed, and we hung up. I tried to shake the feeling, but it lingered. I didn't know it at the time, but that was the beginning. That simple phone call, that casual invitation. It was the start of the end of everything I thought I knew. But I didn't realize how deep things had gone until that night. Emily didn't come home. It wasn't like her to just disappear, especially without a text or call. I'd been texting her, sending little reminders about the kids' school projects, asking if she was still at the party. No reply. Just nothing. I waited up for hours. Every time I heard a car pull into the driveway, I'd get up, hopeful. But it wasn't her. It was nothing but silence. I won't lie, I started to panic. It wasn't like her. She had never been the type to just not come home. I wasn't worried about the party itself. I mean, it was Sarah's thing, and I trusted Emily. But this felt different. My stomach twisted into knots, and I couldn't shake the feeling that something had gone terribly wrong. Around midnight I got a text. It was from Emily. I'm sorry, but my classmate offered me a better life. The message was cold. Detached. Nothing like her at all. I stared at those words, unable to process them. I kept reading it over and over, like maybe there was something I was missing. But no, there it was, clear as day. My wife was telling me she wasn't coming back. She wasn't coming home to her family, to the life we had built together. She was leaving me, for someone else. I felt like the floor had just dropped out from under me. It was like a punch to the gut. Everything I thought I knew about her, about us, was just gone. And that was just the beginning. It's been a few days since that text, and I haven't heard from her. I've tried calling, texting, even emailing. But there's nothing. Not a word. I feel like I'm losing my mind. And here's the kicker. I don't even know what to feel. Betrayal? Anger? Confusion? I thought I knew my wife. I thought we had a solid relationship, a family. But now I'm just left in the dark, with nothing but that message. I don't know who this classmate is. Who could just swoop in and offer her a better life than the one we had? What did I miss? Was there someone else the whole time? I don't even know how to explain this to the kids. They'd been asking where Mommy is. All I can say is that she's working late, that she'll be back soon. How do you explain something like this to a 6-year-old and an 8-year-old? I don't know what to do next. But I can't just sit here and let her walk away without a word. She owes me more than that. She owes us more than that. I'm about to find out who this classmate is. I'm about to find out why she left. And when I do, nothing will ever be the same again. But for now, I'm just waiting. The days that followed felt like a fog. I barely slept, barely ate. I had to focus on the kids, keep things as normal as possible, which was a joke. Every time I looked at them, their innocent eyes filled with confusion, I felt a pang in my chest. They didn't understand why Mommy wasn't coming home. Why she wasn't there to tuck them in at night, to help with homework, to kiss them goodnight. I kept telling them she was busy, that she'd be back soon. But it was a lie. I knew it, and I think they knew it too. It's strange how one text message can unravel everything. That better life line kept echoing in my head. What did she mean by that? A better life? Was I not enough for her anymore? Was the life we built not enough? I had to know. I spent the next few days doing what I should have done earlier, looking into her social media. It felt wrong, invasive, like something I shouldn't be doing, but I was desperate for answers. Maybe there were clues I missed. Maybe I could find out more about this classmate. I started with Sarah. She was the only name I had. Her Facebook was public, luckily. I scrolled through her posts, her pictures. She had posted about the party the weekend before, the one Emily had gone to. Lots of people tagged in the photos. Emily was there, smiling, laughing in the background. There were other familiar faces, too, old friends from their high school days. Nothing unusual. But then I found something else. A post from just a few days ago. It was Sarah, sitting at a bar with a man I didn't recognize. He looked a bit older than me, well-dressed, but his face, there was something about it. Something that made my skin crawl. The caption read, "Reunited with an old friend. Life's too short, right?" I froze, staring at the man in the picture. I couldn't explain it, but I knew right then and there that he wasn't just some old friend. There was a connection between him and Emily. I could feel it. I didn't know how, but I was sure. I kept scrolling, looking for more. And there it was. A message thread between Sarah and Emily. It was private, obviously, but Emily had shared it publicly by mistake in one of her comments. I could see the outline of the conversation. It wasn't much, just a few lines, but it was enough to make my stomach drop. Sarah. He's just what you need, Em. Trust me, I wouldn't steer you wrong. Emily. I'm scared. What if it's a mistake? Sarah. You deserve better, babe. He's offering you the life you've always dreamed of. I didn't need to read any more. It was clear as day. Emily had been in contact with Sarah about him, this mysterious man. And Sarah was encouraging her. Pushing her into something. But what was it? Who was this guy? I couldn't just sit around anymore. I had to find out who he was. That night, after putting the kids to bed, I did what I should have done sooner. I drove to the address listed on Sarah's Facebook. It wasn't far from our place, just a few miles away. My hands gripped the steering wheel, knuckles white. I could feel my heart pounding in my chest. I wasn't thinking clearly. I wasn't sure what I'd even do when I got there, but I had to know. I had to confront whoever this guy was. When I pulled up, I could see a well-kept house, lights on in the windows. I parked across the street and watched for a while, trying to get a sense of the situation. Was Emily inside? Was she with him? The thought of it made me feel sick. It wasn't long before a car pulled into the driveway. A sleek, expensive-looking car. The man from the photo. I didn't know his name yet, but now I knew what he looked like. I sat there for a few moments, just watching. Something inside me told me I shouldn't go any further. Maybe I was just spiraling. Maybe I was overreacting. But then I saw Emily. She walked up to the door of the house, smiling, dressed up, like she had just come from a night out. She didn't see me. She went inside, and the door shut behind her. I felt my blood run cold. I sat there in my car, frozen, staring at the house, my mind reeling. How long had this been going on? Had she been seeing him for weeks? Months? I had no idea. All I knew was that the woman I thought I knew the woman I had spent the last 10 years of my life with, was gone. And she was never coming back. I drove home that night in a daze. I felt like I was losing control of everything. Emily, the kids, my life. The more I thought about it, the more it hit me, she wasn't just gone. She had chosen to leave. For him. For whatever this better life was. The next day, I made my decision. I wasn't going to wait around. I wasn't going to beg her to come back. I filed for divorce. And I was going to take the kids with me. It wasn't a choice I made lightly. But the more I thought about it, the more I realized she had already made her choice. She didn't want this life anymore. So I was going to give it to her. I wasn't going to play the fool. The papers were filed. The kids and I were moving on. And Emily? She was about to find out that the better life she was chasing came with a price. But even as I filled out the divorce paperwork, I couldn't shake the feeling that this was just the beginning. That something much darker was coming. The divorce papers weren't a surprise to anyone, least of all Emily. The moment I handed them to her, her face went blank. It was like I could see her calculating the situation in her head, weighing her options. She didn't look at me. She didn't even seem to care. But the kids were there, and she was still their mother, so I kept my composure. I had to. For them. I had expected a confrontation, maybe even some tears, a plea to work things out. Something. Anything. But she didn't fight me. She was already gone. Emily took the papers with the same cold indifference she'd shown since that text message. She signed them without a word and handed them back to me. There was no argument. No apologies. Just silence. It was like she had already made peace with the fact that we were over. And I didn't even know when it happened. Was it the party? Was it this better life that Sarah had promised her? How long had she been planning this? I still didn't know who this guy was. But Emily wasn't talking. Every time I tried to get any information out of her, she shut down. No explanations. No details. She just left me in the dark, and that's when the anger started to settle in. I moved quickly after the papers were signed. I filed for custody of the kids. We didn't need to stay in that house anymore, not with her not coming back. The kids deserved better than this mess. They needed stability, and I had to give that to them. I packed up the essentials, clothes, toys, their favorite things, and moved us into a small apartment on the other side of town. It wasn't much, but it was enough. Enough for us to start over. It wasn't easy. I won't lie. It felt like I was drowning in paperwork and lawyers and constant reminders of how much had changed. My world had shifted overnight, and I was trying to hold on to the pieces while everything else crumbled around me. And then, just when I thought I was getting a handle on things, Emily showed up at my door. It was late, almost midnight, when I heard a knock. I wasn't expecting anyone. The kids were asleep, and I had just finished a long shift at work. I peeked through the peephole, and there she was. Emily. She looked like hell. Her makeup was smudged, her hair was a mess, and her clothes were wrinkled. I could see it in her eyes, she was broken. She wasn't the confident, detached woman who had walked out on us. She was a shell of herself. And as I opened the door, I could feel the tension in the air. Something was different. "I need to talk to you," she said, voice trembling. I didn't say anything at first. I wasn't sure what to say. My anger flared up, but I kept it in check. "Talk?" I finally managed to say. "After everything? You left us, Emily. You chose him over your family. What is there to talk about?" Her eyes filled with tears, but she didn't cry. She was holding it together, barely. He used me," she said, her voice barely a whisper. "He promised me everything, and I believed him. But it was all a lie. He took everything. Everything I had, and then kicked me out. I have nowhere to go." I was stunned. Part of me wanted to feel sympathy for her. Hell, maybe I did. But the rage inside me drowned it out. She had made her choice. She had walked away, leaving us behind for whatever he offered. Now she was coming back with nothing but a sob story? Why should I care? I asked, voice cold. You left us, Emily. You chose him. So why are you standing here now? Her face crumpled, and for the first time since all this started, I saw her true vulnerability. Because I was stupid, she said, choking on the words. I thought I could have everything, a better life, a fresh start. But I was wrong. I should have never left you. I should have never left the kids. I'm so sorry. The apology was weak. I could tell she meant it in some way, but it didn't make a difference. Words didn't matter anymore. I stepped back, closing the door slightly. You're sorry? Sorry doesn't fix what you've done. Sorry doesn't bring back the time you took from me. From us. She didn't push. She didn't try to make excuses. She just stood there, looking like she wanted to crumble. She was broken, but I wasn't ready to pick up the pieces for her. But even as I started to shut the door, she spoke again, her voice so low that I almost didn't catch it. I need help. Please. I don't have anywhere to go. I froze. The words hit me harder than I expected. I wasn't sure if it was pity or anger or something else entirely, but I didn't want to help her. But she was the mother of my children. And despite everything, part of me still felt the need to protect her. I knew the situation wasn't as simple as I wanted it to be. There was no easy answer, no quick fix. I finally relented, opening the door just enough for her to slip inside. What happened? I asked, trying to keep my voice even. Who is he? What did he do to you? She took a shaky breath. His name is Mark. He's got money. A lot of money. He promised me a life that I could never have with you, luxury, freedom, excitement. But when I got there, it wasn't like that. He had other plans. He used me. I was just a thing to him, a way to pass the time. And when he was done, he kicked me out like I was nothing. The coldness in her voice sent a shiver down my spine. This wasn't the Emily I knew. This wasn't the woman who had stood by me for years. This was someone else. I wanted to feel sorry for her. I did. But something inside me snapped. She had chosen this path, and now she was asking me for help? Why should I help you? I asked, the words barely controlled. After everything, why should I let you back into our lives? I don't know, she whispered. I need to fix this. I need to make things right. Please, please. I don't know where else to go. I didn't answer right away. I just stood there, staring at her. And then, as I looked into her tear-filled eyes, something dark and unforgiving rose within me. I'll think about it, I said, finally stepping back. But don't expect me to just forgive you. Not after everything you've done. She nodded, her shoulders sagging. And with that, she quietly stepped inside. I didn't know if I was making a mistake. I didn't know if I was giving her a chance she didn't deserve. But one thing was clear, this wasn't over. Not by a long shot. Emily stayed with me that night. I don't know why I let her. Maybe it was because I still had some semblance of care for her. Maybe I was weak, or maybe I just didn't know how to say no to her. She didn't ask for a place on the couch. She didn't even ask for a bed. She just silently walked into the spare room, the one that used to be the kids' playroom before they started sharing a bedroom. She didn't even unpack a bag. She just sat there, staring at the walls, her eyes hollow, the weight of everything that had happened crashing down on her. She didn't say much. She didn't need to. I could feel her shame. I could feel the distance between us. I could feel the years we'd spent together dissolving, like sand slipping through my fingers. I didn't sleep that night. I couldn't. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the image of her leaving with him. I saw the text. I saw her walking into his house. I couldn't shake the feeling that she had abandoned us. And no matter how much she begged for forgiveness now, I couldn't just forget. I didn't tell the kids she was staying. I didn't want them to get their hopes up. Emily had already been gone for days, and I didn't want to confuse them further. They'd already been asking too many questions, questions I didn't have answers to. The next morning, I tried to stick to the routine. I made breakfast. I got the kids ready for school. I tried to act like things were normal. But it wasn't normal. Not anymore. Emily didn't come out of the room. I didn't ask why. It didn't matter. I knew she was in no place to take care of anything, least of all herself. She was broken, and part of me wanted to feel sorry for her. But another part, the part that had been hurt, betrayed, was just done. After the kids left, I sat down at the kitchen table, staring at the divorce papers. I kept wondering if I was making the right choice, or if I was just being too cold. Maybe this was my chance to be a hero. Maybe this was my opportunity to show the kids how strong I could be, how much I could protect them from the hurt that their mother had caused. But every time I thought about it, my mind kept drifting back to Mark. Mark. That name was like a hammer in my brain. Who was he? What did he have that I didn't? I kept picturing him, tall, sharp features, expensive clothes, a life I couldn't provide. He wasn't the kind of guy who would settle for someone like Emily unless he wanted something from her. I started Googling him. I had nothing to lose at this point. His name came up in a few business articles, mostly related to investments. Mark Williams. Successful. Powerful. He owned multiple properties, some high-end, some industrial. His name was attached to a lot of things I'd never heard of before. I dug deeper, reading everything I could. The more I learned, the more I hated him. There was no way I was going to let him take Emily from us. No way in hell. That afternoon, Emily finally came out of the room. She looked at me, hesitated, then walked slowly toward the kitchen. I didn't look at her. I was too focused on the screen in front of me, the images of Mark and his luxurious life that I couldn't give her. She tried to speak, but the words stuck in her throat. "I'm sorry, Jason," she said quietly. "I don't expect you to forgive me, but I'm trying to fix this. I want to make things right." I didn't look up. "How? You think coming back here after abandoning us is going to fix anything?" She flinched at my tone, but I didn't care. I was tired of trying to spare her feelings. I was tired of being the nice guy. "You left us, Emily," I said, standing up, finally facing her. "You left your family. You left me. And for what? A guy who uses women like you. A guy who doesn't even care about you enough to keep you around? You think I should just roll over and act like everything is fine?" She looked down, tears threatening to fall, but I wasn't about to let her manipulate me again. Not this time. I didn't know what else to do," she whispered. "I thought I was doing the right thing. I thought I could." "You thought you could have a better life," I interrupted, quoting her text. "That's what you said to me, Emily. And now you're back here, crying because your better life fell apart. What do you expect from me? Sympathy? A second chance?" She shook her head slowly. "No. I need to fix this. I need to fix my mistakes. I was wrong. Please. Please, Jason. I don't know what to do." My anger flared again, but this time it wasn't just at her, it was at myself, too. I had let this happen. I had allowed this woman to betray me, to destroy everything we built. I had let her walk away like she was just some stranger. But I wasn't going to let it continue. I wasn't going to let her back into our lives just because she was broken. She needed to face the consequences of her actions. She needed to understand that there was no going back from this. I stood up and grabbed the divorce papers from the table, slamming them down in front of her. "You've made your choice, Emily," I said coldly. "And so have I. I'm not going to let you back in just because you've lost everything. You left us. Now you can deal with the consequences." Her eyes widened, and she stepped back, clearly shaken by my words. "You're really going to do this? You're really going to make me leave?" "I've already made my decision," I said, my voice hard. "The kids and I are moving forward, and you're not part of that anymore." I didn't give her a chance to respond. I just turned and walked out of the room, leaving her standing there speechless. I thought that would be the end of it. But I was wrong. The next day, I got a call from my lawyer. He had received a message from Emily's lawyer. It was a request for joint custody. And something else. Emily wanted the house back. The house I had worked so hard for. The house I was determined to keep for the kids. It was a direct challenge. And I wasn't about to back down. This was no longer about just her leaving. This was about me standing my ground. And Emily? She wasn't going to get away with this. Not without a fight. But what I didn't know was that the battle I was about to face was going to be far more twisted than I could ever imagine. I never expected Emily to come at me like this, at least, not this quickly. I had braced myself for some kind of fight, but I wasn't prepared for her to go straight to her lawyer and demand joint custody. And the house. I felt my chest tighten with disbelief. She had really gone this far. She had left us for another man, torn apart everything we had, and now, she was asking for half of it all? She wanted a piece of the life she'd abandoned? The life I had worked so damn hard to build. I wasn't going to let her have it. Not without a fight. I spent the next few days burying myself in legal papers, texts, and emails. My lawyer was clear. If Emily was coming after the house, I had to be ready. And that wasn't even the worst part. Emily had also filed for shared custody, citing her desire to remain involved in the children's lives. Bullshit. I hadn't seen her so much as glance at the kids in weeks. She didn't care about them until she lost everything else. And that was the part that stung the most. She wasn't asking to see them out of love or genuine concern. No, this was about control. This was about regaining some semblance of what she thought she deserved. The anger in me grew with every word my lawyer spoke. I was ready to take it all the way. There was no way I was going to let her walk back into our lives like nothing had happened, especially not after the way she'd hurt us. The betrayal still burned too deeply. But more than that, I wasn't going to let her use me, or the kids, as some kind of bargaining chip in her selfish game. The more I thought about the lawyer's words, the more it hit me. This wasn't just about a divorce or custody. This was about me showing Emily that there were consequences. Real consequences. So I took the fight to court. The proceedings were long and exhausting. Every time I had to sit in that sterile, cold room, staring at Emily as she sat on the opposite side of the table with her lawyer, I could feel my blood boil. Her lawyer tried to paint her as a concerned mother who was simply looking for a second chance to be a family again. They tried to convince the judge that she was a victim, that Mark had used her, that she deserved sympathy and understanding. And I was the angry, bitter ex-husband clinging to the past, refusing to co-parent, refusing to forgive. That's how they painted me. A man so blinded by rage that I couldn't see what was best for the children. It made me sick. But I wasn't backing down. Not now. Not after everything she had done. It wasn't long before the real twist came. One evening, after court had adjourned for the day, Emily showed up at my apartment again, her face pale, her eyes filled with something I hadn't seen in weeks. Desperation. "I need to talk to you," she said, her voice shaking. I stood in the doorway, arms crossed, watching her. My temper flared immediately. "I told you already, Emily. There's nothing left to talk about." But she stepped forward, desperation taking over. "Please. I don't have anywhere else to go. Mark, he's gone. He kicked me out. I have nothing. Nothing at all. I don't know what to do. I thought I was making the right choice. But I was wrong." Her words hung in the air, the raw emotion in her voice finally cracking through the wall of anger I had built up. Part of me wanted to give in. Part of me wanted to help her. But another part, the part that had been betrayed, was screaming inside my head. I couldn't help her anymore. She had made her bed. Now she had to lie in it. "You're the one who chose him, Emily," I said coldly. "You left. You didn't just leave me, you left your family. And now you want me to pick up the pieces?" She nodded slowly, tears slipping down her cheeks. "I was stupid. I thought I was going to have everything, freedom, luxury, excitement, but it was all a lie. He used me, Jason. I never should have left. I'm sorry. Please don't do this. She stepped forward again, but I held up my hand to stop her. Stop, Emily. Don't you dare come back here with that same story. You had everything, and you threw it away. You destroyed us. And now you want to pretend like nothing happened? I didn't know what was happening, she cried. He promised me everything, but when I got there, it wasn't like I thought. He wasn't who he said he was. He used me. I was just another thing to him. And now I'm alone, with nothing. For a second, I stood there, just watching her. Part of me wanted to feel sorry for her. Part of me wanted to help her pick up the pieces, to feel that old sense of responsibility, the sense that I was the one who would always protect her. But the truth was, I wasn't that man anymore. You think you're going to come back here and I'll just take you in? I said, shaking my head. You think I'm going to let you into our lives again, just like that? I don't have anywhere else to go, she whispered, her voice breaking. Please, Jason. I looked at her, and for a moment, I wondered if I could let her back in. I wondered if I could forgive her and try to make things work for the kids' sake. I thought about the good times we'd had, before everything fell apart, and the thought almost made me break. But then I remembered the text message. I'm sorry, but my classmate offered me a better life. Those words echoed in my head, and I felt the weight of everything she had done. She hadn't just left. She had chosen to walk away. She had chosen him. She had chosen that better life. I wasn't going to be her fallback. Not anymore. No, I said, the word harsh and final. I can't. You made your choice, Emily. You made it, and now you're going to have to live with it. I'm not your backup plan. Her face crumpled, but I didn't feel a thing. I had done enough for her. I had tried to be the good husband, the good father, and where had it gotten me? Betrayed. Used. I wasn't going to let her do it again. She turned and walked away, her sobs filling the hallway. But I didn't feel relief. I felt nothing. The divorce proceedings continued. Emily had nothing left, and the more I looked into Mark's background, the more I realized the truth about what had happened. Mark was a liar, a manipulator. He didn't want her. She was nothing more than a toy to him, a distraction. But I wasn't going to let her come crawling back to me, thinking I was her second chance. I was done being her backup. Done being her safety net. The game was over. And I had no intention of losing. The days after Emily's plea for help felt surreal. Every part of me knew I had made the right choice, but still, there was this nagging feeling, like a shadow hanging over me. I wanted to feel victorious, to stand tall and feel like I had done the right thing for my family. But deep down, the idea of Emily returning, no matter how much she had wronged me, still lingered. But I wasn't going to fall for it. Not again. I had learned the hard way. The person who had walked out that door months ago was not the same woman who stood in front of me now. And I couldn't afford to ignore that reality. The divorce continued, dragging on like some endless legal battle. Emily, desperate and with no place to go, stayed with a friend in the city, barely in contact with me. It wasn't even about the kids anymore. The damage had already been done. The courtroom battles were long, drawn-out affairs, with neither of us willing to back down. I got the kids more and more. The house felt emptier, quieter, without her in it. But I started to settle into it. It became my house again. The kids and I, we were making it work. It wasn't easy, and some days were harder than others, but we were doing it. We were finding a new rhythm. And that's when I found out something that made my blood run cold. One evening, while the kids were in bed, I got a phone call from my lawyer. He had just received an email from Emily's legal team. It wasn't about the house. It wasn't about custody. It was a request for a post-nuptial agreement. At first, I thought I was hearing things. A post-nuptial agreement? After everything she had done? She had abandoned me for some rich guy and now wanted me to sign a piece of paper that would give her more of my assets? The audacity of it, My blood boiled. I called my lawyer back immediately. "I'm not signing that paper," I said, my voice tight with anger. "There's no way in hell I'm giving her a single thing after what she did." My lawyer sighed. "I understand, but there's a twist. It looks like Emily is asking for a portion of your assets in exchange for dropping her claim on the kids. The idea is that she'll give up her claim for joint custody if you sign." I was quiet for a long moment. My mind raced. Emily wanted to make a deal? After everything? After all the damage she'd caused? This was her way of trying to buy her way out of the mess she'd created. But I wasn't stupid. This wasn't about me. This wasn't about the kids. This was about her saving face and holding on to some semblance of control. She was desperate. And if she thought I was going to play her game, she was mistaken. "I'm not signing anything," I said, the words coming out more firmly this time. "Tell her to get lost." The next few days were a blur. I couldn't focus. Every time I thought about Emily's lawyer's request, a new wave of anger hit me. It felt like Emily was still trying to pull the strings, like she was still trying to manipulate me. She thought she could buy her way out of this. She thought she could just fix things with a few legal moves and a post-nup. But she had underestimated me. She had underestimated how far I was willing to go. The situation felt like a chess game, and Emily had just made a move. But this wasn't her game anymore. This was mine. I didn't want to do it. I didn't want to play dirty. But if that's what it took to protect myself, protect the kids, and protect what little we had left of our lives, then so be it. I hired a new lawyer. Someone who would go after Emily with everything he had. Someone who would make sure she got nothing out of this. The next court session came, and Emily was there, sitting in the same stiff, formal way she had for weeks. Her eyes were puffy. She hadn't been taking care of herself. But there was something else in them now, something almost desperate. She looked like she had given up on herself. Like she had nothing left to lose. Her lawyer stood up, ready to present the post-nup, but before he could even open his mouth, I raised my hand. My lawyer leaned over to me, his brow furrowed, but I didn't care. "I'm not signing that," I said loudly, cutting through the tension in the room. "I'm done negotiating. There's no deal here. Emily walked out on her family, and now she wants to play the victim? She had the option to stay. She had the choice. She chose to leave." Emily looked at me, and for the first time in what felt like forever, I saw a crack in her tough exterior. She opened her mouth to speak, but I didn't give her the chance. "You're not getting anything from me," I continued, voice firm. "Not now. Not ever. You can't walk back into our lives like nothing happened. You can't just tear us apart and then expect me to fix it for you." There was a long silence. Even the judge seemed to be waiting for something, but I stood my ground. Emily's lawyer shifted uncomfortably in his seat, looking between his client and me. Emily, pale and trembling, dropped her head into her hands. Her lawyer cleared his throat. "Your Honor, I believe we should take a recess to discuss this matter further." The judge nodded, and the room emptied out for a break. As I walked out of the courtroom, I glanced back at Emily one last time. She was staring at the floor, her body hunched as though the weight of everything had finally crushed her. I could see the faintest hint of regret in her eyes, but I didn't feel anything. No pity. No sympathy. It was over. She had made her bed. And now, the game was about to take its final turn. The days that followed were a blur of legal motions, filings, and more tense court appearances. Emily's requests grew more desperate, her arguments more flimsy. But it didn't matter. I had already won. The house, the kids, my peace of mind, it was all in my hands. And then, one day, when I least expected it, she came to my door. She was standing there, tears streaming down her face, her hands shaking. "I was wrong, Jason. I've lost everything. He doesn't want me. He never did. I've made a terrible mistake." I stood frozen in place. Her words hit like a punch to the gut. This was it. The moment I had dreaded. The moment I feared the most. But the question was, would I let her back in? Would I let her break me all over again? I stood there, staring at her, and I didn't say a word. Emily's presence at my door, drenched in tears, hit me harder than I ever expected. In that moment, all the anger, the betrayal, the legal battles, it felt like it could disappear with just a few words from her. My heart wavered, but only for a second. She was broken. She was crying in front of me. But my mind couldn't shake the memory of everything she had done. It had been weeks since she left. Weeks of torment. Weeks of her absence, her cold rejection, and all that had followed. She had chosen him. She had told me, in no uncertain terms, that she wanted a better life, and now, here she was, crumbling at my feet. I had every right to shut the door in her face. To tell her to go back to the man she thought was going to give her everything. To let her deal with the consequences of her decisions. But she wasn't just a stranger on my doorstep. She wasn't some random person who could be cast aside. She was my wife. The woman I had married. The mother of my children. And despite everything, despite how much she had hurt me, the urge to protect her still lingered buried deep under all the scars. I could feel my hands shaking as I stood there, looking at her. Jason, I don't know where to go. Please. You have to believe me. I was wrong. I shouldn't have left. I thought he loved me, but he was just using me. He doesn't care about me. I'm nothing to him. Her voice cracked on the last words, and the sound of her sobs almost made me take a step forward. But then I heard it again, the words she had texted me. I'm sorry, but my classmate offered me a better life. I couldn't forget that. I couldn't forget how easily she had walked away from us. How she had tossed aside everything we built together, everything I thought we had, for a lie. I wanted to reach out, to console her, but I couldn't. I couldn't fall into that trap again. I crossed my arms over my chest and stood tall, my eyes cold. You made your choice, Emily. You walked away. You threw it all away for some fantasy life with Mark. You don't get to come back now and expect me to just open the door. She shook her head frantically, her face twisted with pain. No! I never meant to hurt you. I never meant for any of this to happen. I didn't know what I was doing. I was so stupid, Jason. I thought he was the answer to everything. But he never cared about me. He was just playing me. And now I'm left with nothing. I felt a pang of guilt. Was I being too hard? But I swallowed it down. No, I had to stay strong. I had to make it clear that I wouldn't be her safety net anymore. You really think I'm just going to let you back in? I asked, the words bitter on my tongue. After everything? After you told me that the life I gave you wasn't enough? After you walked out and told me you wanted better? She nodded, tears falling freely now. I was wrong. I was so wrong, Jason. I don't expect you to forgive me. I don't even know if you can. But please, please, just let me try to make it right. For the kids. For us. The silence hung between us like a weight. I glanced past her, toward the empty house, our house. I thought about the kids, about what they needed. I thought about the future. Was there any chance I could forgive her? Was there any chance we could try again? But I had already been burned. And this wasn't a simple mistake. This was betrayal. No, I said again, this time with more finality. I'm not taking you back. I can't. I won't. Her face crumpled, and for a moment I saw the woman I had once loved. But it was fleeting. I remembered who she was now, who she had chosen to be. I'm sorry, I added, my voice colder than I wanted it to be. I'm sorry you got hurt. I really am. But this is it. You made your bed, Emily. You have to lie in it. Her body shook with sobs, but I didn't move. I couldn't. After what felt like an eternity, she turned, her footsteps slow and uncertain, before she vanished into the night. I watched her go, and something inside me wanted to feel something for her. But there was nothing. She had burned her bridges. I closed the door quietly, locking it behind me. But as I turned away from it, my eyes drifted to the small family photos on the walls. The kids. My kids. My life. They were the only family I had now. Over the next few days, Emily's desperation continued. She called several times, left messages, showed up at my door more than once. I ignored her. I refused to listen to the apologies, the pleading. The weeks that followed were a mix of legal drama and silent tension in the house. Emily didn't reach out anymore. I assumed she had given up. Maybe she had finally realized that she couldn't manipulate me into letting her back in. Maybe the reality of what she had done had set in. But just when I thought I could breathe a little easier, when I thought I could finally move on, I received a letter. It was from the law firm handling Emily's divorce filings. Apparently, she was contesting the terms of the custody arrangement. She wanted a change. She was demanding joint custody. It was as if she hadn't learned a damn thing. She hadn't even acknowledged the pain she caused. She was only focused on what she could get. What she could still control. I held the letter in my hands, my fists trembling with fury. She had the nerve to do this now. After everything? And in that moment I knew I couldn't let this go. The gloves were off. This wasn't about her anymore. This was about protecting my kids, about making sure they had a future. Our future. And no matter what it took, I was going to make sure Emily never had the power to hurt us again. I wouldn't just let her take my children away. I wouldn't let her destroy the life I had built for them. And I sure as hell wasn't going to let her rewrite the past like nothing had happened. The next court session would be the final showdown. And I was ready. But Emily wasn't the only one playing a game anymore. The day of the court hearing arrived, and everything felt like it was closing in. The walls of the courtroom seemed tighter than ever. My mind was clouded with anger, but there was no turning back now. Emily had pushed me to this point. She had forced me into a corner where I could no longer remain passive, where I had to fight with everything I had to protect what was mine. The kids. My home. My dignity. I walked into the courtroom, my lawyer beside me, as calm as I could manage. I looked around, briefly glancing at the opposing side, Emily's lawyer, sharp and prepared, and Emily herself, sitting rigidly with a gaze that avoided mine. She had a new look now, softer somehow. She wore a pale blue blouse and looked almost fragile. But there was still something about her that didn't sit right with me. Something that felt off. I didn't trust her anymore. As we took our seats, Emily's lawyer immediately started with the usual motions, but today, the tension was thick. Emily's posture was stiff, her hands clenched in her lap. She didn't look at me. She couldn't. The judge called the session to order, and as the proceedings began, Emily's lawyer presented her case. Emily wanted to change the custody agreement. She wanted joint custody. She said she had found stability in her life and that she was ready to be a responsible parent again. I couldn't believe my ears. How dare she? After all the lies, all the hurt, and now she thought she could just waltz back into my kids' lives? After everything she had done, she expected me to just give her equal rights to the children she abandoned? It felt like a slap in the face. But I couldn't let it show. I had to remain calm, collected. I wasn't about to lose my kids to her. Not after everything. I stood when my lawyer motioned for me to speak. Your Honor, I began, my voice steady, though my heart was racing. I understand that my wife, Emily, wants to regain custody of our children. But I need to be clear, she left us. She abandoned this family without a second thought, choosing to chase after an illusion of a better life. She told me, in no uncertain terms, that she wanted out. She didn't want the life we built together. She made a choice, and now that things didn't turn out the way she imagined, she's trying to come back and rewrite history. There was a pause. I could see Emily flinch, her eyes darting to the floor. But I wasn't done. She didn't just leave me. She left her children. She walked away from them, and I've had to pick up the pieces. She hasn't been there for them. She hasn't supported them, not financially, not emotionally. And now, When things have gotten difficult for her, she expects us to just welcome her back as if nothing happened. As if she hasn't already burned every bridge we had? I could feel the tension in the room. The judge, who had been listening intently, shifted in her chair. Emily's lawyer opened his mouth to object, but I wasn't finished. I'm not trying to take away her rights as a mother. But I am trying to protect my children. They need stability. They need to know that they can trust the people around them. They need to know that their mother won't just disappear again. And if she thinks she can just step back into their lives after all this, without understanding the consequences of her actions, then I can't, in good conscience, allow that. I sat down, feeling my chest tighten. My lawyer nodded at me in approval, but I couldn't shake the feeling of rage that still burned inside me. I couldn't believe we were here. That we were still fighting over this woman who had thrown us all away like we were nothing. The judge seemed to take my words into consideration. There was a long silence, and Emily's lawyer fumbled with his papers before finally standing up. Your Honor, we understand the respondent's concerns, he began, his voice faltering slightly. But we believe Emily has shown a sincere desire to return to her children's lives. She has changed. She has learned from her mistakes, and we request that joint custody be considered so she can properly fulfill her role as a mother. I couldn't help it. I had to respond. I shot to my feet before my lawyer could stop me. Learn from her mistakes? I said, my voice dripping with disdain. She hasn't learned a damn thing. She used me. She used us. She used the kids to fill a void in her life. And the moment things got hard, she threw us away. Now she wants to come back because the grass isn't greener on the other side. She doesn't get to come back and pretend like nothing happened. The only thing she's learned is that she can't always get what she wants by destroying people. There was a moment of stunned silence in the courtroom. Emily looked as if I had slapped her, her face pale. Her lips trembled, but she didn't speak. She didn't even look at me. The judge, who had been quiet throughout the back and forth, finally spoke. Mr. Barnes, I'm aware of the emotional complexity of this case. And while I understand your feelings, we must also consider the well-being of the children. But I must also take into account the mother's wishes, as well as her ability to provide a stable environment moving forward. My heart dropped. The idea of her getting anything was terrifying. I couldn't let it happen. The judge continued, I will take everything into consideration before making a final ruling. However, I will say this, the court does not take abandonment lightly, and the mother will need to prove that she is fit to care for her children in the future. This case is not over. I'll review the evidence, and a final decision will be made in due course. I sat back down, the weight of her words pressing on me. There was a sick feeling in my stomach. The hearing ended with no final decision, but I knew one thing for sure, Emily wasn't getting away with this. I had made my case. I had exposed the truth. Now, all I could do was wait. The days dragged on. I thought about what I had said in court. And while I still had anger in my heart, I began to question whether I had gone too far. Maybe I was too harsh. Maybe there was a part of me that still cared for her, still wanted her to be the woman I once knew. But then I would think of the kids, their faces when she left. The quiet moments when they would ask about her. The holes she had left in their hearts. And I knew. I had done the right thing. I couldn't allow her to have a second chance to hurt them. Then, just when I thought I could rest, I got a call that would shake everything to its core. Emily wasn't done yet. She had one more card to play. And it would hit me harder than I could have ever imagined. I'd been preparing myself for the inevitable next step in this endless saga, the judge's ruling. I kept telling myself I was ready for whatever came next. I had to be. My kids were depending on me, and my resolve had never been stronger. But life has a way of throwing curveballs, and just when I thought I was on solid ground, she made her move. It was a quiet morning when my phone buzzed on the kitchen counter. I was getting the kids ready for school, the usual chaos of cereal spills and last-minute reminders to grab their backpacks. But when I saw the number on the screen, I froze. It was Emily. I didn't want to pick up. I had told myself over and over again that she didn't deserve any more of my attention. That I had to stay focused on the kids. But some morbid curiosity, got the better of me. I answered the phone. Jason. Her voice was shaky, urgent. I need to talk to you. It's important. I stood in the kitchen, the noise of the kids in the background almost fading as her words hit me. What is it, Emily? I'm in trouble, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. I didn't want you to know this way, but I think you need to hear it from me. My mind raced. Trouble? What could she possibly be in trouble with now? She had already wrecked everything. Was she trying to pull some new stunt to gain sympathy? Just tell me what's going on. There was a long pause on the other end. Mark, he's gone. He left me. He used me, Jason. Everything he promised, it was all a lie. I was just a pawn in his game, and now I have nothing. He's taken everything from me. I felt a knot in my stomach, a sick mix of disbelief and anger. Mark. The man she had left me for. The one she thought would provide her with a life that I couldn't. And now, after everything, he had discarded her. How is that my problem? I spat, trying to keep my voice steady. You made your bed, Emily. You walked away from this family for that better life you thought you deserved. So what? He used you and now you want me to feel sorry for you? I'm not asking for your sympathy. She snapped, her tone shifting, the desperation creeping back in. But I need your help. He took everything. He's gone and I'm left with nothing. I don't have anywhere to go, Jason. I thought I could make it work with him, but he kicked me out. I stood there, silent, my mind a storm of conflicting thoughts. My first instinct was to slam the phone down. To tell her to go find a way out of this herself. But then, the faintest, smallest voice in my head whispered maybe you can help her. That little bit of humanity that was left. The part that still remembered the woman I once loved. I felt the weight of the situation pressing on me. She was asking for my help, but it wasn't help she deserved. Not after everything she had put me through. After what she had done to the kids. After she tore apart everything I held dear. But there was a part of me, the same part that had tried to protect her when she came to the door, broken and crying, that couldn't shut off completely. Are you serious, Emily? I said, my voice low. Do you really expect me to open the door and let you in after everything? You left us. You chose him over your family. And now that it's not working out, you think you can just come crawling back? She started crying then, her sobs breaking through the phone, sharp and raw. I didn't know what I was doing, Jason. I was stupid. I thought he loved me, but it was just a game to him. He used me to get what he wanted. He took everything, my money, my things, and now I have nothing. I have nowhere to go. Please, Jason, I don't know what to do. I just need a place to stay. Just for a few days. I closed my eyes, a headache forming between my temples. Every fiber of my being screamed at me to shut this down, to end this conversation once and for all. But the longer I listened to her, the more it felt like she was trying to pull me back into her mess. She had done this to herself. I knew that. I knew it better than anyone. But then the thought of the kids, our kids, flashed in my mind. What would they say if they knew I turned their mother away? What would that do to them? Would they hate me for it? Would they blame me for shutting the door on her when she needed help? I gripped the phone tighter, fighting the wave of guilt and anger threatening to overwhelm me. No, Emily, I said, my voice firm, my heart hardening with each word. You've made your choices. You didn't choose us when you had the chance, and now you're on your own. I can't help you. There was silence. A long, painful silence. And then, in a voice barely audible, she whispered, I'm sorry, Jason. I didn't mean to hurt you. I wanted to say something, anything, to tell her that she hadn't just hurt me. She had destroyed everything we had. But I held it in. I couldn't waste any more energy on her. Goodbye, Emily, I said flatly and ended the call. I stood there for a few moments, staring at the phone in my hand. Part of me felt a twisted relief, but there was also something else, something I couldn't shake. Something that gnawed at the edges of my mind. She was out of my life. She had chosen to leave, and now she had to deal with the consequences of her actions. She didn't get to come back, not after everything. But as I walked back into the kitchen to finish getting the kids ready, I felt something unsettling settle deep in my gut. Was it guilt? Was it doubt? Or was it something else entirely? And just as I was about to shake it off, my phone buzzed again. This time, the message was from an unknown number. It was a picture. A picture of Emily, standing on the side of the road, holding a suitcase. Her eyes were red from crying, her face a mask of exhaustion. And the text read, "You were right, Jason. I have nothing. Please help me." I stared at the message for a long time, the weight of her desperation hanging in the air. But I already knew what I had to do. I couldn't go back. I just couldn't. But why did it feel like she was still controlling everything? It's strange how everything can change in the blink of an eye. One moment you're thinking that maybe, just maybe, you've moved past it. The anger has dulled, the pain has scarred over, and you can see the light at the end of the tunnel. And then, just like that, you're pulled back in. Not by choice, but by something you can't control. Something you didn't even see coming. After receiving that message from Emily, I had hoped it would be the last time I ever heard from her. I had hoped that this time, for good, she would fade into the background where she belonged. I told myself it was the last time I would ever let her disrupt my life. But it wasn't. The following days were a blur of routine, work, kids, the endless cycle of school runs and meal prep. But in the back of my mind, there was an ache. A gnawing feeling that wouldn't go away. Emily's message kept playing over and over in my head, like a broken record. I have nothing. Please help me. It echoed in my thoughts, and no matter how hard I tried to block it out, it wouldn't leave. I knew I had made the right choice. She didn't deserve my help. She didn't deserve anything from me. But the part of me that remembered her, the woman I had married, the mother of my children, was still there, deep down, whispering that maybe I should do something. Maybe I should at least check on her. So, I did the unthinkable. I called her. It wasn't to let her back in, not exactly. It wasn't to reconcile or to give her any hope. I called her because I needed answers. I needed to hear it from her own mouth. What had happened with Mark? How had it all gone so wrong? When she picked up, her voice sounded different. It was weaker, smaller, than I had ever heard it before. "Jason," she said, almost like she couldn't believe I was calling. "You're really calling me?" I tried to keep the anger out of my voice, but it was hard. So hard. "I don't know why I am. You left us. You chose him. And now look at you." I swallowed the bitterness that threatened to rise in my throat. "What happened, Emily? What did he do to you?" There was a pause, and I could hear her breathing shakily. He was never who I thought he was," she finally said. "At first, he seemed perfect. He gave me everything I wanted. Everything you couldn't. He promised me everything: money, a better life, a future." She laughed bitterly, almost like she was mocking herself. "But it was all a lie, Jason. He only wanted me for what I could give him. He took everything from me. My money, my trust, my dignity." My chest tightened as I listened. Part of me wanted to feel sorry for her. Part of me wanted to believe she had learned. But I knew better. I had seen this before. It wasn't remorse she was feeling, it was desperation. And desperation didn't change anything. "Why didn't you just come back? Why didn't you try to fix things with the kids?" I asked, my voice cold. She was silent for a moment, and then I heard her choke out the words. "I was too proud. I thought I could make it on my own. But I couldn't, Jason. I can't." Her voice broke as she said the last part, and I heard her sniffle quietly. I felt a twinge of something I couldn't quite place. It wasn't sympathy. It was something darker. Something that made me question everything I'd been feeling lately. Had I been too harsh? Had I been so focused on punishing her that I hadn't even considered that she might genuinely need help? Before I could answer, she spoke again, almost in a whisper. I have nowhere to go, Jason. I don't have anyone. I was wrong. Please, please don't let me be alone. And that was it. The moment I lost everything. The moment I realized just how deep into the trap I had fallen. The part of me that wanted to help, that still remembered the woman I had loved, reacted before I could stop it. The words spilled out of my mouth without thinking. Come over. I'll let you stay for a while. But just until you get back on your feet. Just until you can figure things out. But this is the last time, Emily. Don't expect anything more from me. I regretted it instantly. The moment I said it, I knew I was making a mistake. But it was too late to take it back. She didn't waste any time. Within hours, she showed up at my door, standing in the cold with nothing but a small bag in her hand, her eyes red from crying. She looked like a shadow of the woman I had once known. She looked broken. I let her in. I told myself it was for the kids, so they wouldn't see her out on the streets, but deep down, I knew. I wasn't doing it for them. I was doing it because a part of me still wanted to believe that she could change. That maybe, just maybe, we could fix this mess. Maybe we could pick up the pieces, even if it was just for the sake of the kids. But as soon as the door closed behind her, I realized that was the moment everything changed. It was the moment I let her back in, again, and this time, there would be no turning back. The next few days were tense. She stayed in the guest room, barely speaking to me unless it was necessary. The kids didn't ask about her much, though they were obviously curious. Every time I saw her, I was reminded of how little she truly understood the consequences of her actions. She was still the same woman who had walked away from her family, chasing something that didn't exist. And now she was back, taking up space in a house that she had abandoned. But it wasn't long before things started to unravel. Slowly at first, then all at once. One evening I came home from work, and the house was eerily quiet. I walked through the front door, expecting to find Emily in the living room, maybe watching TV or sitting on her phone. But she wasn't there. Neither were the kids. I checked the guest room. Empty. Then I checked the kitchen, the backyard. Nowhere. My stomach dropped. Something wasn't right. I grabbed my phone and tried calling her, but it went straight to voicemail. That's when I noticed something that hit me like a punch to the gut. Her suitcase, the one she had brought when she first arrived, was gone. I felt my heart race. My first thought was that maybe she had left again. But then a text popped up on my phone. From her. It was short, blunt. I'm sorry, Jason. I had to do this. Don't come looking for me. And then another text, moments later. I didn't just leave you. I took what was yours. You'll never see the kids again. I stared at the screen, unable to comprehend what I was reading. Had she just taken my children? Had she really done this? I ran outside, adrenaline flooding my veins, my mind spinning. It was too late. I had let her back in. And now, I would pay the price. The sound of a car engine starting in the distance reached my ears, but it was too late to stop her. Emily had just done the unthinkable. She had stolen everything.